Beneath the feet of kings and emperors, hidden in the darkest corners of history, lie vaults of knowledge so dangerous they were sealed away for eternity. Picture this, a forgotten chamber, its entrance concealed beneath an ancient throne, its shelves heavy with scrolls and texts that could shatter everything we think we know. These are the forbidden library's hoards of wisdom deemed too powerful, too unsettling to ever see the light of day. For centuries, rumors of these secret archives have tantalized explorers and scholars, whispering of lost civilizations, suppressed truths, and the terrifying reasons why they were locked away forever. What could be so threatening that rulers would go to such lengths to bury it? Some say these libraries hold the blueprints of forgotten technologies, advanced far beyond their time. Others believe they contain prophecies so accurate they could destabilize empires, or records of encounters with beings not of this world. The truth is, these sealed chambers aren't just repositories of knowledge, they're time capsules of humanity's most guarded secrets, deliberately hidden by those who feared what might happen if they were ever uncovered. And the most chilling part, many of these libraries weren't just forgotten, they were actively guarded, their locations erased from maps, their very existence denied by those in power. Today, we're pulling back the veil on these enigmatic vaults, from the catacombs beneath Byzantine palaces to the labyrinthine tunnels below Mesopotamian ziggurats. We'll trace the footsteps of those who sought to control the narrative of history itself. You'll discover the shocking reasons these libraries were sealed, whether to protect the world from chaos or to keep the masses in the dark. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why some truths remain buried, and why, even now, the echoes of these forbidden archives still haunt the edges of our collective memory. The past is never as silent as it seems. Are you ready to uncover what was meant to stay hidden? The idea of forbidden libraries stretches far beyond dusty shelves and forgotten manuscripts. It speaks to the age-old battle over who controls knowledge and why. Think about it. In a world where information is power, those who decide what gets preserved and what gets buried hold unimaginable influence. These hidden archives weren't tucked away by accident. They were deliberately concealed beneath thrones, temples, and fortresses because their contents had the potential to upend entire belief systems, topple rulers, or even rewrite history itself. Take, for example, the legendary Library of Alexandria, often celebrated as a beacon of ancient wisdom. But what if its destruction wasn't just an accident of war? Some scholars argue that certain texts within its walls were deliberately targeted because they challenged the dominant ideologies of the time, and Alexandria is just one case. Beneath the palaces of Byzantium, emperors maintained secret scriptoriums where scribes copied and then destroyed controversial works, ensuring only the approved versions survived. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform tablets detailing advanced astronomy or medicine were locked away in vaults beneath ziggurats, accessible only to priests and kings. What made these texts so threatening? Sometimes it was science that outpaced the era's dogma, like treatises on heliocentrism or germ theory, ideas that clashed with religious or political authority. Other times it was history itself. Imagine a chronicle proving a royal bloodline was illegitimate, or a first-hand account of a catastrophic event that rulers wanted erased from memory. And then there were the mystical texts, grimoires, prophecies, or manuals on rituals so potent they were believed to bend reality itself. To those in power, these weren't just books. They were weapons, but here's the twist. Sealing away knowledge doesn't always erase it. Instead, it fuels obsession. For every ruler who ordered a library buried, there were seekers, alchemists, rebels, heretics who risked everything to uncover it. The very act of suppression hints at something extraordinary. That truth, no matter how deeply buried, has a way of echoing through time. Even today, fragments of these forbidden archives surface in unexpected places: a scrap of parchment in a monastic cellar, a coded reference in an emperor's diary whispering that the past is far more complex than we've been led to believe. So the next time you hear about a long-lost manuscript or a rediscovered ancient text, ask yourself, who didn't want this found, and more importantly, why? Ancient thrones were never just furniture. They were living symbols radiating authority in a way that went far beyond politics. Think of the Egyptian pharaohs seated upon their lion-footed thrones, believed to channel the wisdom of Osiris himself, or the Byzantine emperors whose elevated seats placed them halfway between heaven and earth. These weren't just chairs, they were sacred anchors designed to convince everyone's subjects and rivals alike that the ruler's power was absolute, unchallengeable, even divine. And that's exactly why so many of these thrones hid secrets beneath them. The connection between physical dominance and control of knowledge runs deep. In Mesopotamia, kings inscribed their thrones with curses to terrify anyone who might steal them, but far worse punishments awaited those who dared probe the vaults below. The Assyrians stored treaties and prophecies in chambers under the royal seat, ensuring only the ruler could access the very documents that justified his reign. Meanwhile, in China, emperors of the Han Dynasty buried dangerous texts including critiques of their rule beneath the jade steps of the throne room, literally entombing dissent underfoot. But why place forbidden knowledge directly beneath the seat of power? It wasn't just about convenience. These locations were meticulously chosen for their symbolism. A throne represented order, stability, divine mandate, so what better way to neutralize threatening ideas than to physically imprison them beneath that authority? Imagine the message: even if rebels or scholars uncovered a hidden text, they'd have to topple the throne itself to reach it. The act of sealing knowledge underground mirrored the way rulers suppressed dissent by burying it so deep it seemed to vanish. Yet there's an irony here. The very grandeur of these thrones drew attention to what might lie beneath. Take the legendary throne of Solomon, said to conceal compartments filled with angelic scripts and forbidden spells. Or the lost throne of the Khazars, rumored to hide maps to a vanished silver city. By binding secrecy to symbols of power, rulers didn't just hide knowledge, they mythologized it. The throne became a magnet for whispers, fueling legends that outlasted the kingdoms they once supported. Perhaps the most telling detail: many of these thrones were destroyed or lost, but the stories of what lay beneath them never faded. That's the paradox of trying to bury truth. The harder you press it down, the more forcefully it rises elsewhere in folktales, in coded manuscripts, even in the designs of later thrones. The past has a way of leaving clues in plain sight if you know where to look. So the next time you see an ancient throne in a museum or a painting, ask yourself, what might still lie beneath it waiting? Among the most enigmatic of these sealed archives is the legendary library whispered to lie beneath China's dragon throne. This wasn't just any collection of scrolls. It was said to hold the heavenly mandate texts, writing so precise in predicting the rise and fall of dynasties that merely reading them could unravel a ruler's mind. Court historians spoke in hushed tones of emperors who dared consult these prophecies, only to descend into paranoia or disappear without trace. One account describes the Tang dynasty's Emperor Xuanzong emerging from beneath the throne chamber with his hair turned white overnight, refusing ever to speak of what he'd seen. What made these texts so dangerous? Some scholars argue they contained astronomical calculations so advanced they could pinpoint celestial events centuries in advance, knowledge that, in the wrong hands, could be used to stage rebellions timed with eclipses or comets. Others point to the Dragon Bone Annals, cryptic records supposedly etched on oracle bones that outlined every major uprising and natural disaster before they occurred. Imagine possessing a book that listed every future famine, invasion, or peasant revolt not as possibilities but as inevitabilities. For an emperor whose legitimacy rested on maintaining harmony between heaven and earth, such knowledge wasn't power, it was a curse. Yet there's another layer to this mystery. A handful of eunuch scribes and concubines left fragmentary accounts describing the library's true purpose. One memoir, discovered hidden in a Ming-era musical instrument, suggests the prophecies weren't just recorded, they were actively shaped. Certain texts allegedly contained instructions for altering celestial portents through ritual, essentially allowing rulers to edit the future. This raises a chilling possibility. Perhaps the library wasn't sealed because its predictions were too accurate, but because they'd been tampered with. If true, it would mean the madness of those emperors didn't come from glimpsing fate, but from realizing they'd been manipulating it all along. The last known reference to the library appears in the diary of a Qing dynasty court astronomer who wrote of discovering a hidden staircase beneath the throne during renovations. Before he could explore further, the passage was bricked up by order of the Empress Dowager Cixi. Interestingly, that same year, she abruptly executed 3 court mathematicians and banned the study of certain star charts. Coincidence or proof that even in the twilight of imperial China, the throne's darkest secret still held sway? Today, archaeologists using ground-penetrating radar have detected hollow spaces beneath the Forbidden City's Hall of Supreme Harmony, but no one's been permitted to excavate. Whatever lies beneath the Dragon Throne, it seems, remains forbidden. While the Dragon Throne's secrets remain locked away, another vault of forbidden knowledge has fueled speculation for centuries: the Vatican's secret archives. This labyrinth of shelves stretching over 50 miles houses some of history's most controversial documents, from suppressed Gospels to trial records of the Inquisition. But the real mystery lies in what isn't catalogued. Whispers persist of a deeper, more restricted level, a vault hidden beneath the papal throne itself, accessible only to a select few. What could be so explosive that even within these hallowed walls, some texts remain under lock and key? Consider the case of the Apocryphon of John, a Gnostic gospel discovered in Egypt in the 19th century. Its depiction of creation clashed so severely with church doctrine that scholars believe earlier copies were systematically destroyed. Yet rumors suggest a pristine version exists in the Vatican's deepest chambers, its pages untouched for a millennium. Then there are the alchemical treatises of Pope John XXII, who allegedly pursued the philosopher's stone in secret, a pursuit later deemed heretical. If these texts survived, where better to conceal them than beneath the very seat of papal authority? The symbolism here is deliberate. Just as earthly kings buried dissent under their thrones, the Vatican's hidden vault represents a spiritual suppression of ideas. Take the Council of Nicaea's unpublished minutes, said to contain debates over Jesus' divinity that nearly split the early church, or the Dossier of Avignon, rumored to document a 14th century pope's negotiations with a faction claiming to possess Christ's lost teachings. These aren't merely historical curiosities, they're theological grenades capable of reshaping faith itself. Yet the most intriguing theory involves the Archivum Arcanum, a supposed sub-level beneath the archives. Medieval scribes wrote of a library within a library, accessible via a trapdoor under the papal throne. Here, legends say, lie texts like the Book of Lamech, a pre-flood manuscript detailing angelic technology, and the Third Testament, a gospel allegedly dictated by Christ after his resurrection. Whether these accounts are fact or folklore, their persistence hints at a tantalizing truth. Some knowledge is considered too volatile to ever reach the light. What makes the Vatican's secrecy unique is its longevity. While empires crumbled and their hidden libraries were looted or lost, this archive has remained sealed for over 400 years, guarded by oath and tradition. Perhaps that's the real lesson here. When power and truth collide, the safest place for dangerous ideas isn't just underground. It's beneath the feet of those who decide what the world gets to know. Beneath the towering walls of the Kremlin, where the echoes of Russia's turbulent past still linger, one of history's most tantalizing mysteries waits in silence: the lost library of Ivan the Terrible. This wasn't just a collection of books. It was said to be a treasure trove of ancient Slavic wisdom, Byzantine manuscripts, and texts so controversial they threatened the very foundation of the Tsar's rule. According to legend, Ivan didn't just hide these volumes, he sealed them away in a labyrinth of chambers beneath the fortress, protected by traps, curses, and a secrecy so absolute that even the architects who built the vaults allegedly vanished without a trace. What could be so valuable or so dangerous that a ruler known for his ruthlessness would go to such lengths to conceal it? Some accounts describe scrolls containing pre-Christian Slavic rituals, outlawed after the baptism of Ruse. Others speak of Byzantine genealogies that undermined Ivan's claim to divine authority, or military treatises detailing forgotten siege tactics that could turn the tide of wars. But the most persistent rumors involve the Book of Veils, a supposed chronicle of Slavic history so explosive that its authenticity is still hotly debated today. If real, it could rewrite everything we know about early Russian civilization. The library's curse, if it exists, seems to extend beyond its walls. Over the centuries, dozens of explorers, from Tsarist antiquarians to Soviet archaeologists, have claimed to uncover clues to its location, only to meet bizarre fates. In the 1800s, a scholar named Stepan Jadionov reportedly found a hidden passage beneath the Kremlin's armory, but died mysteriously days after submitting his findings. In the 1930s, a team of Stalin's engineers drilling for a metro line abruptly halted work after uncovering a vault filled with anomalous materials, only to have their records classified and their names scrubbed from official reports. Even modern ground-penetrating radar surveys have detected vast, unexplored voids beneath the Kremlin's oldest towers, but permission to excavate is always denied. Could the library still be there? Some historians argue Ivan's collection was destroyed during the time of troubles, when Polish invaders ransacked the Kremlin. Others believe it was quietly dispersed, its most dangerous texts burned by the Orthodox Church. But a fringe theory suggests the opposite, that the library wasn't lost at all, but deliberately preserved. After all, Ivan didn't just hide knowledge, he weaponized it. His infamous oprichniki, the black-clad enforcers of his reign, were rumored to use spells and prophecies from forbidden texts to terrorize his enemies. If even a fraction of those manuscripts survived, they'd represent not just historical gold, but a Pandora's box of cultural memory, the most chilling possibility. The library's guardians never left. Persistent accounts from Kremlin staff speak of a secretive archival department answering only to the highest authority, tasked with maintaining special collections inaccessible even to historians. Whether these whispers are fact or folklore, one thing is clear: in a land where power has always been intertwined with mysticism, some secrets are meant to stay buried. And if Ivan's library does exist, its silence may be the most telling artifact of all. The sands of Egypt conceal more than just tombs and temples beneath the gilded thrones of the pharaohs. Legends whisper of scrolls so potent they were erased from history itself. These weren't mere records or rituals. They were said to contain the Sesh per Ankh, the writings of life, a collection of astronomical alignments and spells so precise they could bend the fabric of time. One temple inscription at Dendera cryptically alludes to a text called the Book of Thoth, rumored to grant its reader the power to walk among the stars as the gods do. But here's the chilling detail. Every known copy was systematically destroyed, scrubbed from official records, as if the very knowledge threatened the balance between the mortal world and the divine. What could justify such extreme censorship? Look to the ceiling of the Osirian at Abydos, where a controversial carving depicts what some interpret as a helicopter or spacecraft, an anomaly that mainstream Egyptologists dismiss as eroded hieroglyphs, but that fringe researchers argue hints at lost technology. Even more telling are the Edfu building texts, which describe a primordial era when gods arrived with blueprints for sacred geometry and energy manipulation. If such texts existed beneath the pharaohs' thrones, they wouldn't just challenge our understanding of ancient Egypt, they'd rewrite humanity's entire timeline. The suppression of these scrolls wasn't arbitrary. Pharaohs derived their authority from being the sole intermediaries between gods and men. Imagine the chaos if subjects learned that celestial navigation or healing energies weren't divine gifts but teachable sciences. This might explain why the Book of Breathings, a manual for astral projection, was found hidden in the lining of a priest's coffin rather than enshrined in a library. Or why the Amduat, a guide to the afterlife stargates, was restricted to royalty while simplified versions were given to the elite. Knowledge in this context wasn't just power, it was a monopoly. Yet traces linger. The Turin King List, a fragmented papyrus, records reigns stretching back tens of thousands of years, far beyond accepted history. A handful of tomb paintings depict devices resembling modern electrical components, like the Dendera light bulbs. Even Herodotus wrote of a secret chamber beneath the Great Pyramid where initiates communed with celestial fire. The pattern is undeniable. The closer you get to the throne, the more the records diverge from conventional narratives. The most haunting question isn't whether these scrolls existed, it's what they cost those who sought them. The Greek historian Manetho tells of a pharaoh who opened a forbidden chest beneath his throne and was consumed by a light no man could extinguish. Modern archaeologists have found evidence of deliberate sabotage in certain tomb libraries, with key papyri burned or dissolved in acid. And then there's the curious case of the Metternich stela, a slab covered in anti-magic spells, as if guarding against something far older and far more dangerous than curses. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between myth and history. The pharaohs didn't just hide knowledge to protect their power, they may have been obeying a warning. After all, the same texts that promised godhood also carried grim prophecies. One recovered Ostrachan warns, "To know the path of the heavens is to summon the hunger of the void." That's the real enigma. Were these scrolls buried because they were too dangerous to use or too dangerous to forget? The answer might still lie buried, waiting beneath the weight of a long-fallen throne. High above the streets of Tenochtitlan, where the golden throne of the Aztec emperors once gleamed under the Mesoamerican sun, an even greater treasure lay hidden beneath the ruler's feet, not gold but knowledge. The Aztecs didn't just archive their history, they encoded it in vibrant, painted codices, folding sacred truths into bark paper and deerskin. But the most controversial of these texts weren't stored in temples or schools. They were locked away in vaults beneath the throne itself, accessible only to the Tlatoni, the divine speaker. And when Spanish conquistadors stormed the city, they didn't just burn libraries, They hunted these specific codices with a fury that bordered on terror. Why? Because the Aztecs had recorded something the invaders couldn't afford to let survive. Take the Codex Boturini, a rare surviving fragment that traces the Aztec migration to Tenochtitlan. Unlike other historical accounts, it doesn't just depict events, it predicts them. Hidden symbolism in its illustrations aligns with celestial cycles, suggesting the Aztecs didn't merely observe the stars, they mapped destiny itself. Then there's the infamous Codex Orbin, which allegedly contained a prophecy so precise it foretold the exact year of the empire's collapse. According to Dominican friar Diego Duran, Emperor Moctezuma Roman II consulted this codex before Cortés arrived, and what he read left him paralyzed with dread. But the real mystery lies in the codices that didn't survive. Spanish chroniclers wrote of a black chamber beneath the throne where scribes guarded texts on topics like nahualismo, the art of shape-shifting, and Temazcal rituals that could cure diseases unknown to Europe. One account describes a conquistador tossing a codex into a fire, only for its pages to resist burning until a priest sprinkled it with holy water. Whether fact or folklore, these stories hint at a chilling possibility. The Aztecs may have possessed medical and astronomical knowledge that defied European understanding. The most tantalizing clue comes from an unlikely source, a Nahua nobleman's letter, hidden for centuries in a Spanish archive. It mentions a golden book sealed beneath the throne, its pages filled with antidotes to poisons, surgical techniques, and star charts matching modern astronomical models. If true, it would mean the Aztecs weren't just preserving secrets, they were safeguarding science the rest of the world wouldn't rediscover for centuries. Yet the greatest tragedy isn't what was lost, but what might still remain. In the 1970s, construction workers near Mexico City's Zocalo uncovered a stone slab etched with a warning: "Below lies the breath of the ancients." Archaeologists were summoned, but the site was abruptly filled in. To this day, ground scans reveal hollow spaces beneath the old imperial palace, their contents untouched. Whatever the Aztecs buried there, it seems even time hasn't been permitted to unearth it. Censorship in the ancient world wasn't simply about keeping secrets. It was a carefully crafted system of control designed to shape reality itself. Imagine living in a society where the very books that could challenge authority were locked beneath the ruler's seat, both physically and symbolically out of reach. This wasn't just about hiding inconvenient truths. It was about constructing a world where only one version of history, one path to power, could ever exist. From the burning of Confucian texts by China's first emperor to the selective preservation of Mayan codices by Spanish friars, the act of suppressing knowledge was never accidental. It was a deliberate strategy to erase alternatives, ensuring that dissent couldn't even take root in the imagination of the people. Take the case of the Roman Empire, where Augustus commissioned a public library, but filled it exclusively with works that glorified his reign. Meanwhile, texts criticizing his rule were banned, their authors exiled or worse. The message was clear: knowledge wasn't neutral, it was a weapon, and those who controlled its flow controlled the future. Even in places like Persia, where the famed library of Gondishapur collected wisdom from across the known world, access was tightly restricted to a chosen few. The library wasn't destroyed, it was curated, its contents filtered to serve the interests of the elite. Religious institutions played the same game. The Council of Ephesus in the 5th century didn't just declare certain gospels heretical, it ordered them hunted down and destroyed, not because they were false, but because they offered a vision of spirituality that bypassed clerical authority. The same pattern repeats in medieval Europe, where vernacular translations of the Bible were banned, ensuring that only priests could interpret scripture. Control the text and you control the truth, but here's the twist: censorship often backfires. The very act of banning a text turns it into a legend, fueling curiosity and underground circulation. The Nag Hammadi library, hidden in a jar to escape destruction, resurfaced centuries later to challenge everything scholars thought they knew about early Christianity. The Arthashastra, a manual on statecraft deemed too dangerous for public consumption in ancient India, was preserved in secret by Brahmin families and later revealed strategies of espionage and governance that still resonate today. Suppression doesn't erase ideas, it just forces them to evolve in the shadows, sometimes emerging stronger than before. What does this tell us about the forbidden libraries beneath thrones and temples? They weren't just vaults of lost knowledge, they were battlefields in a war over who gets to define reality. And while the rulers who sealed them are long gone, their legacy lingers in the questions we're still afraid to ask. After all, if history is written by the victors, what happens when we start reading the books they tried to bury? The answer might be hidden not just in what was destroyed, but in what someone, against all odds, chose to save. Archaeologists have uncovered whispers of these forbidden libraries not in grand announcements, but in the quiet details. A misaligned stone in a palace foundation, a shaft too perfectly square to be natural, a mosaic floor hiding hollow spaces beneath its intricate patterns. In Turkey, researchers mapping the tunnels beneath Topkapi Palace stumbled upon a bricked-up corridor lined with niches that once held scroll cases, their contents long vanished. Infrared scans of the Vatican subterranean levels revealed chambers marked inexplicably vacant on official maps, their doorways sealed with leaden seals bearing medieval warnings. Even more haunting are the discoveries that almost happened. In 2015, a team in Uzbekistan traced a series of copper pipes beneath the ruins of Timur's throne room, pipes that shouldn't have existed in the 14th century, only for their permits to be revoked overnight. Local laborers later spoke of a black liquid seeping from the site after heavy rains, staining the earth for weeks. The pattern is uncanny. Every major lead seems to hit an invisible wall. When Egyptian archaeologists used ground-penetrating radar near the Step Pyramid, they detected a chamber beneath the foundation matching ancient descriptions of Imhotep's archive. But the project was abruptly defunded, and the lead researcher transferred to a remote desert dig. In Rome, a restoration team working beneath the Palazzo della Cancelleria broke through a medieval wall in 2019, finding a stash of charred scrolls labeled Libri Fatales, fateful books. Within hours, the site was cordoned off by the Vatican's Swiss Guard, and the scrolls vanished into their archives, coincidence or proof that some lines of inquiry remain forbidden. Perhaps the most chilling evidence comes from what isn't there. Satellite imagery of the Forbidden City shows a perfect rectangular void beneath the Hall of Supreme Harmony, yet no official excavation has ever been attempted. In Istanbul, sonar scans of the Basilica cistern reveal a previously unknown branch tunnel leading toward Topkapi, but the water level mysteriously rises whenever divers approach. And then there are the disappearances. In 1987, a Soviet historian named Dmitry Volkov published a paper linking Ivan the Terrible's library to a network of caves near Moscow. 3 weeks later, he boarded a train to Leningrad and was never seen again. His notes, confiscated by the KGB, included a sketch of a doorway carved with the same symbols found on the Tsar's personal seal. The question isn't just whether these libraries exist, it's who or what still guards them. In some cases, the answer may be bureaucratic inertia or modern political sensitivities. But other sites seem protected by something older. Take the account of a Peruvian archaeologist who, in 2011, discovered a hidden chamber beneath the Coricancha temple in Cusco. His journal describes a wall covered in metallic threads that emitted a high-pitched hum when touched. By morning, the entrance had collapsed and the local ministry declared the area unstable. Similar stories echo from Iraq to India of artifacts that induce vertigo, chambers that defy measurements, and texts that crumble to dust when exposed to light. Science dismisses these as folklore, but the consistency across cultures is unsettling. What if the greatest threat to these libraries isn't time, but us? Modern technology could finally reveal their secrets: LiDAR scans, AI-assisted translation, even quantum imaging. Yet every breakthrough seems met with equal resistance. When a German team developed a technique to read carbonized Herculaneum scrolls without unrolling them, their funding was mysteriously cut. A Japanese firm created a camera capable of photographing texts through lead containers, only to have the prototype stolen from a locked lab. The message is clear: some doors aren't meant to be opened. Whether out of respect for ancient curses, fear of destabilizing revelations, or something more primal, humanity keeps circling these vaults like moths around a flame, drawn to the light but wary of the burn. So where does that leave us with fragments? A cuneiform tablet in Berlin alluding to the sealed wisdom of Nineveh. A Coptic codex in a Dublin museum warning of books that breathe. Even the architecture speaks: throne rooms built over crypts, altars designed as locks. These aren't just storage spaces, they're traps, time capsules, perhaps even apologies from rulers who knew their power depended on secrets they couldn't bear to destroy. The real discovery may not be the texts themselves, but understanding why, after centuries, the world still conspires to keep them hidden. What if these libraries weren't sealed because of what they contained, but because of what they did? Across cultures and centuries, a chilling pattern emerges. The most heavily guarded texts weren't just controversial, they were described as alive. The Babylonian Enuma Elish warns of tablets that speak in dreams, while medieval monks wrote of grimoires that bled when burned. Could these be metaphors, or were the ancients trying to convey something far more unsettling about knowledge that resisted being silenced? Take the case of the Emerald Tablet, a legendary text attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. Alchemists claimed its words rearranged themselves when read aloud, as if the text itself was choosing who could comprehend it. Similar accounts surround the Voynich manuscript, its indecipherable script allegedly causing scribes to hallucinate after prolonged study. Even the Dead Sea Scrolls contain passages describing living ink that moved across parchment long after being written. These aren't just stories of cursed books, they hint at a terrifying possibility that some knowledge actively interacts with its readers, adapting to time, culture, or even the reader's psyche. Then there's the technology theory. The Book of Ingenious Devices, a 9th century Arabic manuscript, describes automata and mechanical wonders that wouldn't be reinvented for 1,000 years. Yet its original versions vanished, preserved only in fragmented copies. Why? Because the Baghdad caliphs feared these designs could destabilize their rule if weaponized. The same logic applies to the Agora of Smyrna scrolls, which reportedly contained schematics for steam engines and hydraulic lifts. When Roman engineers attempted to reconstruct them under Emperor Julian, the resulting explosions killed dozens. Was this incompetence or sabotage by forces determined to keep progress in check? But the most disturbing theory involves not the content of these texts, but their effect. Tibetan monasteries still guard Terma, hidden teachings believed to awaken only when humanity is ready. The Colburn Bible, a Celtic text rediscovered in the 20th century, contains astronomical data so precise it predicts planetary alignments millennia in advance, but also warns that sharing this knowledge too soon could unravel the tapestry of time. Similar warnings echo from the Dresden Codices, eclipsed tables to the Popol Vuh creation cycles. This isn't just superstition. It's a recurring theme that certain truths require specific conditions to be understood safely. The implications are staggering. If these libraries were sealed to protect humanity, whether from destabilizing technologies, psychological triggers, or truths we weren't evolutionarily prepared to grasp, then their guardians weren't tyrants but reluctant custodians. Imagine discovering a nuclear arsenal in the Bronze Age, or the double helix in an era without germ theory. Some doors stay locked not to hide treasure, but because the key itself is dangerous. That may be the ultimate irony of these vaults. The very act of sealing them could have been the most profound act of preservation in history. Yet one question lingers: how do we know when it's safe to open them? As we stand on the threshold of artificial intelligence, quantum physics, and genetic engineering, are we repeating the past or finally catching up to it? The answer might lie not in breaking the seals, but in listening to the whispers of those who knew enough to lock them in the first place. The stories surrounding these forbidden libraries often share a disturbing thread. Those who dared to uncover them met with inexplicable fates. Take the case of British archaeologist Montague Summers, who in the early 20th century claimed to have located a hidden chamber beneath the ruins of a Minoan palace. His journal entries grow increasingly erratic, describing voices in the walls and shadows that moved against the light. Days later, he was found dead in his tent, his notes filled with sketches of a labyrinth no modern excavation has ever uncovered. Then there's the infamous 1923 incident at the tomb of Tutankhamun, where several members of Lord Carnarvon's team died under mysterious circumstances after opening the pharaohs in a chamber, a space some believe originally housed scrolls removed before the public excavation. But curses aren't always supernatural. Some defenses were chillingly practical. The Han dynasty employed mechanical guardians in their underground archives, crossbow traps triggered by pressure plates, described in court records as silent sentinels against the unworthy. In medieval Constantinople, a scholar named Leo the mathematician boasted of designing a vault that flooded with quicklime fumes if tampered with, a claim supported by 19th-century excavators who found skeletons still clutching manuscripts in a sealed chamber beneath the hippodrome. Even the Vatican's Archivum Arcanum is rumored to have a breathing lock, a mechanism that detects changes in air pressure and seals itself permanently if unauthorized entry is attempted. Yet the most persistent legends involve protections beyond mere mechanics. Tibetan monks speak of terma texts guarded by mind seals, psychic barriers that induce amnesia or madness in those unprepared for their contents. The Kolbrin Bible's custodians claimed its pages emitted a low-frequency hum that caused vertigo and nosebleeds in uninitiated readers. And then there's the eerie account from a Soviet archaeologist who, during a survey of a Khazar burial mound, reported finding a silver chest inscribed with warnings in a forgotten script. When opened, his team allegedly suffered simultaneous heart arrhythmias, a phenomenon later replicated in lab tests on the chest's unusual electromagnetic properties. What unites these stories isn't just the danger, but the specificity. These aren't generic haunted tomb tropes, they're tailored deterrents. The Aztecs allegedly laced codices with psychoactive compounds that seep through the skin, while Byzantine emperors encoded their most sensitive scrolls with hypnotic patterns designed to trigger epileptic fits. Even the placement of these libraries seems deliberate beneath thrones where the ruler's feet would rest, symbolically crushing dissent, or in crypts aligned with celestial events, as if the knowledge itself was tied to cosmic cycles. Perhaps these warnings were never about superstition but psychology. A curse is a story, and stories shape behavior more effectively than any lock. When the Babylonian king Nabonidus rediscovered a sealed vault beneath Sippar's temple, he left its contents untouched, citing the terror of the gods. Was he truly afraid, or did he recognize the power of a narrative that could outlive empires? The answer may lie in the paradox these libraries present. The more fiercely something is guarded, the more we're compelled to seek it. And that, in the end, might be the most ingenious protection of all, a mystery that perpetuates itself across centuries, ensuring only those who truly understand the stakes will dare to look deeper. The hunt for these lost libraries has drawn explorers into some of the most remote and treacherous corners of the world, only for many to return empty-handed or not return at all. In the 1950s, a team of Soviet archaeologists ventured into the Altai Mountains, following rumors of a subterranean archive linked to Genghis Khan's lost treasury. Their last radio transmission described a chamber lined with metal plates etched in an unknown script before static swallowed their voices forever. Search parties found their camp intact, tents still standing, equipment neatly arranged, but no trace of the team. The only clue, a single notebook left open on a makeshift desk, its final entry reading, "The walls are not stone, they breathe." Then there's the infamous Nepal incident of 2008, when a group of scholars funded by a tech billionaire attempted to locate a legendary Himalayan vault said to house pre-Buddhist texts. Survivors reported descending into a natural cavern system, only to encounter a series of perfectly square tunnels impossible for the era they were attributed to. Their LiDAR scans revealed a vast network beneath Mount Kailash, but the expedition ended when half the team developed sudden, severe aphasia, losing the ability to read or write for weeks. One linguist claimed the symbols carved into the tunnel walls refused to stay still when observed directly. But it's not just explorers who have brushed against these secrets. In 2016, a construction crew digging a subway extension in Istanbul uncovered a section of wall covered in glyphs matching those from Ivan the Terrible's personal seals thousands of miles from Russia. Before archaeologists could arrive, the tunnel flooded inexplicably, despite being far above the water table. The few photos salvaged show markings eerily similar to those in Dmitry Volkov's vanished notebook. Coincidence or evidence that these libraries defend themselves through means we barely comprehend? Even when artifacts surface, they often raise more questions than answers. Consider the Barcelona fragment, a charred piece of vellum discovered in a Catalan monastery's attic in 1989. Carbon dated to the 12th century, it contains a passage from what scholars believe is the lost Book of Thoth, but the text defies translation, shifting meaning each time it's read aloud. Laboratory analysis revealed the ink contains microscopic metallic particles arranged in fractal patterns, a feature unknown in medieval manuscripts. Who crafted this, and more importantly, why does it resist being understood? The most chilling pattern emerges from the accounts of those who have gotten closest. A Portuguese historian studying Templar records claimed to have found coordinates to a hidden archive beneath the Rock of Gibraltar. He published nothing, but his private journal, posthumously released by his daughter, describes a vault that hums in G-sharp and warnings about knowledge that unspools time. Similarly, a Japanese team using muon tomography to scan the Great Pyramid in 2019 detected a previously unknown void behind the so-called chevron blocks. Their official report downplayed the finding, but leaked emails between researchers mention anomalous density readings and a decision to cease investigation pending spiritual consultation. What unites these modern searches isn't just failure. It's the consistent suggestion that these libraries don't merely contain information. They interact with those who seek them, as if the act of preservation wasn't just about hiding truth, but about containing something alive. Perhaps that's why every breakthrough seems to collapse under its own weight, why permits are revoked and funding dries up. the greatest mystery isn't where these libraries are buried, but whether we're meant to find them at all. Imagine standing before a sealed door, knowing that behind it lies knowledge powerful enough to rewrite history or unravel society. This isn't just a hypothetical scenario. With modern technology, we're closer than ever to uncovering these forbidden libraries, and that raises an urgent question. Should we? On one side, scholars and scientists argue that suppressing knowledge only fuels ignorance, leaving humanity trapped in cycles of dogma and superstition. After all, many of history's greatest breakthroughs, from Galileo's astronomy to Darwin's evolution, were once considered too dangerous to share. Yet others warn that some truths might be better left buried, not out of fear, but out of responsibility. What if these archives contain more than just controversial ideas? What if they hold techniques, prophecies, or technologies that could destabilize our world before we're equipped to handle them? Take the Voynich manuscript, a centuries-old puzzle no one has cracked. Some linguists believe its gibberish script is a sophisticated cipher, while others insist the text actively resists decoding, as if the knowledge inside is meant to stay hidden. Similar debates surround the Dresden Codex, a Mayan text with eclipse predictions so precise they shouldn't have been possible without telescopes. If these are just fragments, what might lie in the untouched vaults beneath thrones and temples? The argument isn't just about curiosity, it's about consequences. When the Nag Hammadi Gospels were discovered, they revealed early Christian beliefs that challenged centuries of doctrine. If that single find caused theological earthquakes, what would an entire library of suppressed truths do? Yet history also offers cautionary tales. When Spanish conquistadors looted the Aztecs' medical codices, they dismissed them as pagan nonsense, only to realize too late that they contained treatments for diseases Europeans had no cure for. In their haste to destroy dangerous knowledge, they erased breakthroughs that could have saved countless lives. This is the paradox. Sealing away knowledge might protect society from chaos, but it also robs us of tools to survive that very chaos. The Book of Thoth wasn't just feared for its spells. Legends say it contained advanced mathematics and engineering principles. What if its loss set human progress back centuries? The ethical dilemma deepens when we consider who gets to decide what's revealed. In ancient times, that power rested with kings and priests. Today, it could fall to governments, corporations, or even algorithms. Would we trust any modern institution to fairly judge which truths are safe for public consumption? And what happens when forbidden knowledge leaks piecemeal without context or safeguards? The internet age has shown us how easily fragments of truth can be weaponized, whether it's misinformation or sensitive data. Now imagine that scenario with texts believed to contain apocalyptic prophecies or forgotten sciences. Perhaps the answer lies in balance. Instead of all or nothing access, we could adopt the approach of Tibetan Terma traditions, where hidden teachings are released only when society reaches a level of understanding capable of integrating them. Modern equivalents might involve phased disclosures, with scholars and ethicists vetting materials before wider release. After all, we already do this with classified archives, waiting decades to reveal state secrets until their impact has cooled. Why not apply the same caution to ancient secrets? The debate ultimately circles back to a single, haunting idea. Knowledge isn't neutral. It's a force that can enlighten or destroy, depending on how it's wielded. The rulers who sealed these libraries weren't just tyrants. They were people who understood that some truths carry weight far beyond their words. Whether they acted out of wisdom or fear, their legacy challenges us to ask, are we opening doors out of reverence for truth, or simply because we can? The answer might determine whether these long-buried archives become humanity's greatest revelation or its final Pandora's box. the idea of forbidden knowledge isn't just confined to dusty history books. It pulses through the veins of our greatest myths and stories, revealing how deeply this fear is woven into the human psyche. Take H.P. Lovecraft's Necronomicon, a fictional grimoire so dangerous its very existence drives men to madness. It's no accident that Lovecraft modeled his cursed tome on real occult texts like the Picatrix or Clavicula Salomonis, books historically banned for their alleged power to summon forces beyond human control. These stories resonate because they tap into a universal truth that some doors once opened cannot be closed. Even older legends echo this dread. The biblical tale of the Tree of Knowledge warns that enlightenment comes at a price: exile from paradise. In Greek myth, Prometheus is tortured eternally for stealing fire from the gods, a metaphor for the peril of sharing divine secrets with mortals. What makes these stories endure isn't just their drama, but their eerie consistency across cultures. The Aztecs spoke of Amoxtli, sacred books that could summon storms if read aloud, while Norse sagas describe runes so potent they could sink ships if carved incorrectly. Whether framed as divine punishment or cosmic consequence, the message is clear: knowledge isn't free, it demands a toll. Fiction takes this fear further, imagining libraries that defy logic. Jorge Luis Borges' Library of Babel envisions an infinite archive containing every possible book, including ones that reveal the universe's secrets, buried in gibberish. The horror here isn't scarcity, but overload. Truth exists, yet finding it is nearly impossible. Similarly, The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco traps its characters in a labyrinthine monastery library where a poisoned book kills readers to protect a heretical truth. These aren't just plot devices, they're reflections of real historical anxieties about who controls information and why. Modern storytelling continues this tradition. The SCP Foundation's Antimemetic Division deals with artifacts that erase themselves from memory, while the Magnus Archives podcast features a library of fears literally bound in human skin. Even video games like Elder Scrolls lock forbidden texts behind magical barriers, mirroring real-world practices like the Vatican's Index Librorum Prohibitorum. The parallels are uncanny because the fear is primal, that some truths could unravel reality itself. What does this tell us? Perhaps fiction's forbidden libraries endure because they let us safely confront our own curiosity. In stories, we can pry open Pandora's box without consequences, unlike history, where the stakes were terrifyingly real. Or maybe these tales are warnings, reminding us that the line between enlightenment and ruin has always been thinner than we'd like to admit. Either way, one thing's certain: as long as secrets exist, humanity will keep dreaming of the shelves that hold them. The notion that ancient libraries might have contained scientific knowledge far beyond what we assume isn't just wild speculation. It's a hypothesis grounded in some unsettling anomalies. Take the Antikythera mechanism, a 2,000-year-old Greek device discovered in a shipwreck. Its intricate bronze gears capable of predicting celestial events with precision that shouldn't have been possible until the Renaissance. If one artifact like this survived by chance, what else might have been lost or deliberately erased? Researchers point to texts like the Book of Ingenious Devices by the Banu Musa brothers, which described programmable machines and automatic doors centuries before their reinvention. But what if these weren't outliers? What if they were fragments of a broader scientific tradition that was systematically suppressed? Consider the accounts of ancient energy manipulation. The Dendera light carvings in Egypt, often dismissed as symbolic depictions of lotus flowers, bear a striking resemblance to modern electrical components, right down to the snaking cables and bulb-like shapes. Even more compelling are the descriptions in Hindu epics like the Mahabharata, where Vimanas soar through the sky using mysterious energies called rosas. While mainstream historians attribute these to myth, a growing cohort of scientists and engineers argue they might encode forgotten physics principles. The late astrophysicist Carl Sagan once mused that advanced astronomical knowledge in ancient texts could hint at contact with lost or even extraterrestrial civilizations, not as fantasy, but as a challenge to our assumptions about the linear progression of science. Then there's the mystery of material science. Roman concrete, for instance, has endured millennia in seawater, while modern versions crumble within decades. Recent studies revealed it contains rare minerals that self-heal, cracks a technology we've only just begun to replicate. Similarly, the Damascus steel used in medieval Islamic swords displayed nanostructures impossible to reproduce until the 21st century. These weren't accidents, they were the products of rigorous experimentation. So why don't we have the original manuals detailing their creation? The answer might lie in the fate of the Library of Carthage, burned by the Romans not just to punish a rival, but to monopolize its secrets. Knowledge, after all, is power, and power thrives on exclusivity, but the most tantalizing and controversial theories involve concepts that sound ripped from science fiction. The Vimanika Shastra, a Sanskrit text on aeronautics, describes alloys that become weightless when electrified, echoing modern experiments with superconductivity. Byzantine chronicles mention a burning mirror Archimedes designed to focus sunlight into a weapon, a feat replicated by the U.S. military in 2010 using parabolic mirrors. Even Herodotus wrote of an Egyptian singing statue that emitted tones at dawn, a phenomenon modern acousticians attribute to precise stone resonance. Coincidence or evidence that ancient scientists understood principles we're only now rediscovering? The implications are staggering. If these technologies existed, their loss set humanity back centuries. But perhaps the greater tragedy isn't that they were forgotten, it's that they were hidden. Theophilus of Alexandria's purge of pagan scientific texts in the 4th century wasn't an isolated act. From China's Qin dynasty burning Confucian treatises to the Spanish destruction of Mayan codices, the pattern is clear. Dominant powers often rewrite history by erasing the innovations that could challenge their authority. What we call myth might be the scattered remains of a science too dangerous or too empowering to survive. This isn't just about admiring ancient ingenuity. It's a wake-up call. Our assumption that progress moves in a straight line ignores the cyclical nature of knowledge, how it can be won, suppressed, and won again. Those sealed libraries beneath thrones and temples might have held more than prophecies or heresies. They could have been arcs safeguarding truths the world wasn't ready to face. And if that's the case, the real question isn't whether these texts existed, it's whether we're finally prepared to handle what they might reveal. Imagine a world where the Bible didn't include the Book of Revelation, or where the Quran lacked certain verses. Now consider this: that world might have existed if certain texts hadn't been sealed away. The battle over religious orthodoxy wasn't fought just in councils and sermons. It was waged in hidden chambers beneath temples and palaces, where rival scriptures were locked away to ensure only one version of the divine remained. The Nag Hammadi Library, discovered in Egypt in 1945, offered a glimpse into what was lost. Here were Gospels not of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but of Thomas and Mary Magdalene, texts portraying Jesus as a mystic teacher rather than a divine savior, and suggesting salvation came through knowledge, not faith alone. These weren't obscure fringe writings. They were popular enough to threaten the early church's authority, which is precisely why they vanished for 1,500 years. But Christianity isn't unique in this regard. In India, The Agama texts of Hinduism were once suppressed by orthodox Brahmins who deemed their tantric practices too radical. Buddhist monasteries in Tibet hid Terma teachings, revelations believed to have been concealed by Padmasambhava himself, to be revealed only when humanity was spiritually ready. Even Judaism has its Sefer HaZohar, a foundational Kabbalistic text lost for centuries before resurfacing in medieval Spain, its mystical teachings challenging mainstream rabbinical thought. The pattern is universal. When alternate visions of the divine emerge, those in power often choose burial over debate. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Take the Gospel of Judas, recovered from an Egyptian cave in the 1970s. It depicts Judas not as a traitor, but as Christ's most trusted disciple, tasked with the tragic role of enabling crucifixion for humanity's salvation. This single text upends 2 millennia of Christian vilification of Judas, but it nearly didn't survive. Carbon dating shows the manuscript was copied in the 3rd century, then hidden, likely to avoid destruction during purges of heretical texts. What if it hadn't been buried? Would Judas have been reinterpreted centuries earlier? Would Christian art and theology look radically different today? Yet the most profound implications lie not in individual texts, but in the systematic reshaping of belief. The Council of Nicaea in 325 didn't just standardize Christian doctrine, it authorized the suppression of competing narratives. Records suggest bishops voted on which texts were inspired and which were heresy, a process less about divine truth than political consensus. Similar purges occurred in Islam under Caliph Uthman, who ordered variant Qurans burned to consolidate a single version. Even the Maya had their own doctrinal battles. Spanish friars noted how post-classic rulers revised earlier creation myths to legitimize their rule, discarding older codices that contradicted the new orthodoxy. This raises a haunting question. How much of what we call traditional belief is actually the result of historical censorship? The Apocalypse of Peter, another Nag Hammadi text, describes a hell where sinners aren't tormented eternally, but rehabilitated, a theology of universal salvation that clashes with mainstream Christianity's emphasis on damnation. Had it survived openly, would the concept of hell be softer today? Would the fear driving centuries of conversions have lessened? We'll never know, because these alternatives were sealed beneath layers of stone and dogma, leaving only whispers of what might have been. Perhaps the greatest tragedy isn't the loss of these texts, but the silencing of the debates they could have sparked. Religious orthodoxy thrives on certainty, but buried beneath thrones and altars are the ghosts of questions never asked, the roads not taken. Every time a scroll was hidden or a codex burned, a fork in spiritual history was erased, and with it, the chance for a more expansive, nuanced faith. The libraries weren't just storing books, they were locking away possibilities, and that, more than any single doctrine, may be the most profound loss of all. History brims with moments when forbidden knowledge didn't just challenge ideas, it shattered minds. When Galileo pointed his telescope at Jupiter and saw moons orbiting it, he didn't just defy the Church's geocentric model. He threatened an entire cosmic order that had anchored human identity for centuries. The backlash wasn't merely political, it was existential. The same terror gripped the medieval scholars who first translated Arabic texts on heliocentrism, their hands trembling as they copied words that could upend the universe as they knew it. This wasn't just heresy, it was a psychological earthquake, and rulers understood its power all too well. Consider the fate of Hypatia of Alexandria, the mathematician whose lectures on astronomy and philosophy drew crowds until her ideas clashed with rising religious orthodoxy. Her murder wasn't just about silencing a rival, it was a warning about the destabilizing force of knowledge that dissolves certainty. The same pattern repeats with the Cathars of medieval France, whose belief in dualistic cosmology so threatened the church that their texts were burned and their followers massacred. It wasn't enough to erase the ideas, the very memory of them had to be scorched from collective consciousness. But why such extreme measures? Cognitive science offers a clue. Human brains crave consistency, what psychologists call cognitive coherence. When deeply held beliefs collide with undeniable truths, the mental dissonance can trigger everything from denial to outright breakdown. The Aztec emperor Moctezuma II allegedly fell into a catatonic state after reading prophecies of his empire's fall. Norse sagas speak of rune masters who went mad after deciphering inscriptions about Ragnarök. Even today, whistleblowers like Edward Snowden describe the crushing isolation of holding truths that reshape reality for others who aren't ready to hear them. This psychological weight explains why some rulers didn't just ban forbidden texts, they ritualized their suppression. In Byzantium, condemned manuscripts were burned in ceremonies mirroring executions, complete with public readings of their crimes before destruction. The Qin dynasty didn't just bury Confucian scholars alive, they entombed their books with them, as if knowledge itself could be quarantined like a plague. The message was clear: some truths aren't just dangerous, they're contagious. Yet there's a tragic irony here. The more fiercely knowledge is suppressed, the more it festers in the cultural subconscious. The Gnostic Gospels, banned for centuries, resurfaced as echoes in Renaissance art and Romantic poetry. Alchemical symbols, once punishable by death, seeped into the foundations of modern chemistry. Perhaps the rulers who buried these libraries understood something we're only now confronting: that knowledge can't be destroyed, only delayed. But delay has consequences. The centuries spent fearing the Earth's movement around the sun or the microscopic world of germs weren't just intellectual setbacks, they were collective traumas, wounds carved by the tension between truth and the terror of accepting it. The real lesson of these sealed libraries isn't just about power, it's about the fragility of the human mind when faced with the unbearable. Whether it's a medieval peasant learning the earth isn't the center of creation, or a modern citizen confronting systemic corruption, the pattern holds. Truth doesn't just enlighten, it unmakes, and in that unmaking lies the greatest danger and the deepest liberation of all. From the shadowed cloisters of medieval Europe to the jungle-shrouded temples of the Maya, the impulse to hide and seek forbidden knowledge transcends time and geography. In China, emperors buried texts beneath their thrones to control the mandate of heaven, while Celtic druids encoded their wisdom in Ogham script, carving it into living trees so the forest itself became the archive. The Maya took secrecy further, stashing codices in underwater caverns called cenotes, where the very act of retrieval risked drowning. These methods weren't just practical, they were symbolic. To access hidden knowledge, you had to defy nature, authority, or even the gods themselves. What's striking isn't the differences between these traditions, but the eerie similarities. The Aztecs and the Vatican both used sacred architecture to guard secrets. One buried texts beneath the Huitlaton's throne, the other beneath the papal seat. In both cases, the act of concealment doubled as a display of power. The same motif appears in Norse sagas, where Odin trades an eye for wisdom but keeps the rune's deepest meanings locked in his hall, and in West African griot traditions, where certain histories are sung only to initiates under baobab trees. Whether it's the Vatican's lead-sealed archives or Timbuktu's underground manuscript libraries, the message is identical. Knowledge isn't neutral. It's a commodity, a weapon, or a sacrament, depending on who controls it. Yet the reasons for concealment vary dramatically. In India, the Atharvaveda describes spells so potent they were taught only at night, lest daylight amplify their effects. Contrast that with the Shakers of colonial America, who locked away their most radical visions of gender equality in spirit drawings, deemed too unsettling for the uninitiated. One culture feared the literal power of words, the other feared social upheaval. Similarly, the Dogon people of Mali safeguarded astronomical knowledge of Sirius B, a star invisible to the naked eye, while Renaissance alchemists buried their discoveries in ciphers to avoid persecution. Same instinct, different motivations, one preserving sacred truth, the other evading the stake. The most haunting parallel lies in the legends surrounding these caches. The Slavic Book of Veils and Ireland's Liber Gabala Iren both claim to trace their people's origins to otherworldly teachers, and both were dismissed as forgeries before modern archaeology lent them credence. The Maya's Popol Vuh and Iceland's Prose Edda share eerily similar flood myths, hinting at lost common sources. Whether these connections stem from diffusion or collective human imagination, they underscore a universal truth: buried knowledge isn't just about facts. It's about identity. When a library is sealed, it's not just texts that vanish, it's the potential for entire worldviews to reemerge. Perhaps that's why the drive to unearth these libraries persists. The Cherokee Lost Books, said to contain the tribe's original syllabary, the rumored Cathar Gospels hidden beneath Mont Saga, the Zoroastrian Avesta fragments guarded by Parsi priests, each represents a thread in the tapestry of human understanding, snipped but not destroyed. The act of hiding implies a promise that what's concealed may one day be revealed. From the deserts of Timbuktu to the Vatican's locked shelves, the pattern holds. Secrets outlive their keepers, waiting for the moment when curiosity outweighs fear. And that moment, history suggests, always comes. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a repository of scrolls, it was a beacon of human understanding, a place where the collective knowledge of the ancient world converged. Yet its destruction remains one of history's most haunting losses, not just for the flames that consumed its halls, but for the silence that followed. Imagine walking those corridors in their prime, surrounded by 500,000 texts, treatises on mathematics from Babylon, medical scrolls from India, philosophical dialogues from Greece, and star charts from Egypt, all gone in a blaze that may have lasted months. But here's the twist: the real tragedy isn't just what burned. It's what might have slipped away before the fire ever started. Rumors persist that long before the library's final destruction, select texts were smuggled to safety. Ancient accounts mention scholars fleeing with cartloads of scrolls during political upheavals, hiding them in underground chambers beneath temples or in the homes of wealthy patrons. One persistent legend tells of a network of tunnels beneath the city, where priests of Serapis stashed the most controversial works, texts on alchemy, astral projection, or even early mechanical designs attributed to figures like Archimedes. Could fragments of Alexandria's collection still lie hidden in undiscovered vaults? The idea isn't far-fetched. In 2004, archaeologists excavating a villa near Naples uncovered a carbonized scroll from Herculaneum, its text once thought lost forever. Advanced imaging techniques revealed it to be a previously unknown work by the philosopher Philodemus, proof that even the most fragile manuscripts can survive against all odds. Then there's the mystery of the library's sister institution, the Serapeum. While the main library suffered under Caesar's siege in 48 BCE, the Serapeum endured for centuries as a shadow archive, rumored to hold duplicates of Alexandria's rarest texts. When it too was destroyed in the 4th century, Christian chroniclers wrote of smoke so thick it blotted out the sun for days, but not a single account mentions what became of its contents. Were they burned, or were they, like so much of antiquity's knowledge, dispersed and buried? the answer might lie in places like the monastery of St. Catherine in Egypt's Sinai, where palimpsests' manuscripts scraped clean and rewritten have revealed erased layers of classical texts beneath medieval prayers. But the most tantalizing clue comes from an unexpected source, the Islamic Golden Age. When Caliph al-Ma'mun established the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, his scholars didn't start from scratch. They drew on translations of Greek, Persian, and Indian texts, many attributed to ancient sources of the West. Some historians argue these could only have come from Alexandria's surviving collections, spirited eastward by traders or scholars ahead of the destruction. Manuscripts like Al-Haytham's Book of Optics or Al-Khwarizmi's algebraic treatises bear traces of Hellenistic thought so precise they hint at lost originals. If true, it would mean Alexandria's legacy didn't vanish. It went underground, fueling discoveries under another name. The lesson here isn't just about loss, it's about resilience. Knowledge, like water, finds its way through cracks, whether hidden beneath desert monasteries, encoded in Arabic translations, or lying forgotten in some as yet unexcavated cellar. The spirit of Alexandria endures. And that raises a provocative question. If even a fraction of its holdings survived, what might still be waiting to be found? The answer could rewrite chapters of history we thought were closed forever. Conspiracy theories surrounding these lost libraries often sound like plots ripped from ancient manuscripts themselves, shadowy organizations guarding forbidden knowledge, governments sealing away artifacts that defy history, and archaeologists vanishing after uncovering too much. The stories share a common thread. Someone, somewhere, is actively preventing the truth from surfacing. Take the case of the infamous Vatican silence. For decades, researchers have petitioned for full access to the secret archives, particularly after leaked inventories mentioned texts like the Dossier of Avignon, a medieval document rumored to detail a pope's negotiations with a breakaway sect. Yet requests are denied, fueling speculation that the Church still controls knowledge capable of shaking its foundations. Then there's the curious pattern of abandoned excavations. In the 1990s, a team funded by a tech billionaire claimed to have located a subterranean complex beneath the Giza Plateau using ground-penetrating radar. Their scans allegedly revealed chambers lined with metallic objects, possibly the fabled Hall of Records described by Edgar Cayce. But the Egyptian government abruptly revoked their permits, citing national heritage concerns. Similar stories emerge from Turkey, where a tunnel system beneath Cappadocia, dubbed the Underground Vatican by locals, was sealed off after journalists reported strange artifacts being removed in unmarked trucks. Coincidence or evidence of a systematic effort to keep certain discoveries out of public view? The most persistent rumors involve recovered artifacts vanishing into private collections. A former Soviet intelligence officer once claimed that Stalin's agents smuggled out manuscripts from Ivan the Terrible's library during World War II, only to have them confiscated by a secretive academic division known as Department 7. In Mexico, a retired archaeologist swore he'd seen a codex depicting advanced astronomical calculations in the basement of a wealthy collector's mansion, a codex that matched no known Mayan or Aztec records. When he returned with officials, the collection had been relocated. Even modern technology isn't immune. In 2017, a researcher using AI to reconstruct burned Herculaneum scrolls reported his hard drives were wiped remotely after he decoded a passage referencing the breath of gods. But here's where skepticism is crucial. For every legitimate mystery, there are a dozen hoaxes. The Dendera light bulb controversy, for example, was debunked as a misinterpretation of symbolic carvings. Yet the sheer volume of suppressed excavations, classified reports, and missing artifacts suggests something more than mere myth. Why would a 2008 dig near Mount Kailash be shut down after detecting unnatural tunnel geometries? Why do ground scans beneath the Forbidden City's throne hall show voids matching ancient descriptions of the heavenly mandate vault, yet no permits for drilling are ever granted? The truth likely lies somewhere between paranoia and precedent. History proves that powers, whether religious, political, or corporate, have always curated knowledge to maintain control. From the Catholic Church's Index Librorum Prohibitorum to modern-day classification systems, the instinct to hide disruptive truths is baked into human governance. The real question isn't whether secrets exist, it's whether we're prepared to handle what happens when they're no longer secrets. After all, the greatest cover-ups may not be about hiding the past, but about managing the future. Even with cutting-edge technology at our fingertips, the hunt for these forbidden libraries faces obstacles that seem almost designed to thwart discovery. Ground-penetrating radar and LiDAR scans can map hidden chambers unless those chambers are lined with materials that deflect or absorb the signals. Ancient builders in places like Teotihuacan used layers of mica and magnetite in their structures, minerals known to interfere with modern scanning equipment. It's as if these sites were engineered to remain invisible, their secrets guarded by the very materials that make them durable. Then there's the Earth itself, shifting over centuries to bury these vaults deeper than any archaeological survey can easily reach. The legendary library of Ivan the Terrible, if it exists, may now lie beneath layers of sediment from Moscow's rivers, its entrance sealed not by human hands but by natural forces. In Egypt, rising groundwater has flooded tunnels beneath the Giza Plateau, leaving potential chambers submerged and inaccessible without risking irreversible damage to fragile manuscripts. Even if we pinpoint a location, extraction becomes a race against decay, like the sealed caves in Dunhuang, China, where scrolls survived for a millennium in dry air but began crumbling the moment modern oxygen touched them. But the most daunting barriers might be the ones we can't predict. Ancient architects didn't just hide knowledge, they booby-trapped it. The Han Dynasty's crossbow mechanisms, designed to fire automatically at intruders, are just the beginning. Byzantine texts describe vaults rigged with quicklime pits that would ignite if exposed to air, while Mayan codices hint at pressure-sensitive floors that collapse into sinkholes. Even sound played a role. Acoustic engineers have found that certain subterranean chambers, like those beneath Malta's temples, resonate at frequencies that induce disorientation, a natural security system to deter explorers. Modern technology isn't immune to these challenges. In 2019, a team using muon tomography to scan the Great Pyramid detected a mysterious void, but attempts to drill a tiny camera port were halted when the stone resisted even diamond-tipped bits. Later analysis revealed the blocks were fused with an unknown adhesive, harder than the surrounding limestone. Similarly, attempts to digitally unwrap carbonized Herculaneum scrolls have been stymied by inks that blend into charred papyrus, invisible to X-rays. The irony is painful. We can peer into the human body with MRI machines, yet a 2,000-year-old scroll remains stubbornly opaque. Perhaps the greatest hurdle isn't technical, but ethical. Should we drill into the Vatican's sealed archives if it risks damaging irreplaceable texts? Do we flood dry caves to reach submerged chambers, knowing the water might erase millennia-old pigments? Every potential breakthrough forces a reckoning with preservation. When researchers used AI to reconstruct fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls, some scholars protested that the algorithm's guesses were overwriting historical ambiguity with digital certainty. In our rush to uncover the past, we might erase its nuances forever. And then there are the barriers no one talks about, the ones wrapped in bureaucracy and cultural taboos. Ground scans near sacred sites often face vetoes from local communities or religious authorities. In 2011, plans to explore tunnels beneath the Sphinx were scrapped after Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities deemed the project too sensitive. Similar resistance has stalled investigations beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem and the Potala Palace in Tibet. Whether motivated by reverence, politics, or something more ineffable, these refusals remind us that some doors stay closed not because we lack the tools, but because the world isn't ready to turn the key. The cruelest twist, the very technologies that could reveal these libraries might also destroy them. Hyperspectral imaging can reveal faded ink, but the required light exposure can accelerate decay. Robots small enough to navigate narrow tunnels risk dislodging unstable structures. Even 3D modeling, which seems harmless, relies on laser scans that can subtly degrade organic materials over time. We're caught in a paradox. The more we learn how to find these vaults, the more we understand why they've stayed hidden. So where does that leave us? With patience, humility, and the quiet realization that some secrets aren't lost, they're waiting for the moment when our hands are steady enough, our tools gentle enough, and our minds open enough to receive them without shattering what we've worked so hard to uncover. Until then, the libraries beneath thrones and temples keep their silence, not out of spite, but because true understanding demands more than just curiosity. It demands readiness. Long before ink touched parchment, knowledge traveled on the breath of those trusted to carry it, whispered in torch-lit caves, chanted in sacred groves, or passed between initiates in rituals older than written history. While forbidden libraries were sealed beneath thrones, some truths proved too resilient to be buried. They survived in the most elusive form of all, memory. From the Druids of Celtic Europe to the griots of West Africa, oral traditions became the lifeblood of suppressed wisdom, preserving what ink and papyrus could not. These weren't casual retellings, but meticulously structured teachings, encoded in poetry, song, and rhythm to ensure fidelity across generations. A single syllable out of place could unravel years of training, which is precisely why these methods were so effective. Consider the Eleusinian mysteries of ancient Greece. For nearly 2,000 years, initiates gathered in secrecy to experience rites so potent that revealing them carried a death penalty. Yet not a single written account survives. The rituals thrived exclusively through oral transmission, their power lying in the unbroken chain of whispered instruction. Similarly, Hindu Vedic hymns were preserved with near mathematical precision through tonal recitation, their verses believed to lose potency if written down. Even today, Tibetan Buddhist monks memorize entire sutras spanning hundreds of thousands of words, a living library of syllables held in the mind rather than on shelves. But oral traditions did more than preserve, they protected. Among the Maori of New Zealand, sacred Wakapapa genealogies were recited only by appointed elders, their details altered slightly for outsiders to shield their true meaning. The Hopi people of North America passed down prophecies through clandestine kiva ceremonies, embedding warnings about future cataclysms within stories that sounded like myth to the uninitiated. This wasn't just secrecy, it was encryption. By disguising dangerous knowledge as folklore, these traditions ensured survival under persecution. A Spanish friar might burn a Mayan codex, but he couldn't erase a song sung at a child's cradle. The most compelling evidence of oral resilience lies in the fragments that resurfaced centuries later. When the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, scholars were stunned to find passages matching verbatim with Samaritan oral traditions preserved for millennia without a written source. In Ethiopia, the Kebra Nagast, a sacred text detailing the Solomonic dynasty's origins, was reconstructed in the 14th century from oral histories after the original manuscripts were lost. These weren't imperfect copies, but living threads of memory woven back into the fabric of recorded history when the time was right. Yet the fragility of oral knowledge cuts both ways. The Rosicrucian manifestos of the 17th century hinted at an invisible college of adepts guarding alchemical secrets through initiation, but how much was lost when those chains broke? The Cathars' dualist beliefs, once transmitted through covert sermons in Occitan, now survive only in the accusations of their persecutors. And what of the Siberian Evenki shamans, whose entire cosmology of spirit journeys and star maps vanished when Soviet repression severed their lineages? Unlike a buried library, oral traditions leave no ruins to excavate. When the last keeper of a chant dies without an heir, that knowledge doesn't just fade, it vanishes as if it never was. This raises a haunting question. How many of history's sealed libraries weren't destroyed, but simply translated, their contents distilled into rhymes, dances, or rituals that walk among us unrecognized? The answer might lie in the unbroken hum of a Tibetan monk's mantra, or the cadence of a West African epic recited at dusk. These are the forbidden libraries that couldn't be bricked up or burned, because they were written in something far more enduring than ink. The human voice, carrying truths too dangerous to write, yet too vital to silence. The existence of forbidden libraries doesn't just raise historical questions, it forces us to confront a dilemma as old as civilization itself. Who gets to decide what knowledge is too dangerous to share? For every ruler who sealed away texts to maintain power, there was a scholar who believed those same scrolls held the key to human progress. This tension between control and curiosity isn't confined to ancient thrones or medieval monasteries. It echoes in today's debates over censorship, misinformation, and the ethics of artificial intelligence. The core question remains unchanged. Can truth ever be too volatile for its own good? Consider the paradox of Plato's allegory of the cave, written over 2,000 years ago. In it, prisoners shackled in darkness mistake shadows for reality until one escapes into the blinding light of truth. The story isn't just about enlightenment, it's a warning. The freed prisoner returns to the cave with revelations, only to be ridiculed and threatened by those who prefer the comfort of illusion. This isn't ancient fiction, it's a pattern we see repeated throughout history. When Galileo challenged the Earth-centered universe, his proofs weren't rejected because they were wrong, but because they disrupted the cultural narrative that gave society stability. The same dynamic plays out today, whether in the suppression of climate research by fossil fuel interests or the algorithmic amplification of conspiracy theories that thrive in the absence of trusted gatekeepers. Yet the flip side is equally troubling. If we accept that some truths must be controlled, who holds the keys? The Vatican's centuries-long grip on Gnostic Gospels wasn't just about theology. It was about maintaining a monopoly on spiritual authority. Similarly, when the Qin dynasty burned Confucian texts, it wasn't just erasing philosophy. It was reshaping Chinese identity to fit a single, state-approved mold. Fast forward to modern Silicon Valley, where tech giants quietly curate the boundaries of acceptable discourse through opaque content moderation policies. The mechanisms have evolved, but the stakes are eerily familiar. Knowledge isn't just power, it's the lens through which we perceive reality. This leads to an even thornier question. Could ignorance ever be a form of protection? Indigenous cultures from the Amazon to the Arctic have long guarded sacred knowledge not out of secrecy, but out of reverence for its potential misuse. The Navajo, for instance, traditionally restrict the sharing of certain healing chants, believing their power requires proper training and intent. In a very different context, nuclear physicists grappling with the atomic bomb debated whether to publish their findings, knowing the same science that could energize the world might also destroy it. The line between censorship and stewardship blurs when knowledge carries tangible consequences. Today's information age amplifies these dilemmas. The internet was supposed to democratize truth, yet it's also birthed an era where lies spread faster than facts and deepfakes erode the very concept of evidence. In this landscape, the idea of forbidden libraries takes on new urgency. When a single viral conspiracy theory can inspire violence or a leaked algorithm can manipulate elections, the ancient impulse to control knowledge no longer feels like tyranny. It starts to resemble triage. But here's the catch. The moment we allow any institution to decide what dangerous means, we risk repeating history's worst mistakes. The same Vatican that preserved classical texts also burned heretics. The same governments that classify vital research for national security have silenced whistleblowers exposing corruption. Perhaps the answer lies not in choosing between total freedom and total control, but in rethinking our relationship with truth itself. Forbidden libraries teach us that knowledge isn't inherently good or evil, it's a tool whose impact depends on the hands that wield it. The real challenge isn't burying the tools we fear, but ensuring society has the wisdom to use them well. After all, the darkest secrets aren't those locked beneath thrones, but the ones we haven't yet learned to face without breaking. The race to uncover history's forbidden libraries has entered uncharted territory, fueled by tools our ancestors couldn't have imagined. LiDAR technology, capable of mapping entire jungles and deserts from the air, has already exposed lost cities like Cambodia's Mahendraparvata and Honduras' White City. These same lasers could reveal the telltale outlines of buried chambers beneath ancient thrones, hidden by centuries of overgrowth or deliberate concealment. In Turkey, scans of Cappadocia's labyrinthine tunnels have detected anomalies matching descriptions of Byzantine treasure vaults, yet no shovel has broken ground. Why? Because seeing isn't the same as accessing. These sites aren't just hidden, they're often booby-trapped with collapsing tunnels, toxic deposits, or even psychological deterrents like infrasound frequencies that induce disorientation. Technology can find the doors, but opening them safely is another matter entirely. Deciphering what's inside presents even greater challenges. AI-powered language models are now cracking codes that stumped scholars for generations. The Voynich manuscript, once considered unreadable, has yielded fragments of meaning through machine learning analysis of its bizarre script. Similar algorithms could reconstruct charred Herculaneum scrolls or piece together palimpsests' manuscripts scraped clean and rewritten by detecting chemical traces of erased ink. But here's the catch. These tools don't discriminate between benign historical records and texts that might carry genuine risk. Imagine an AI reconstructing a Mayan prophecy so precise it triggers stock market panic, or a long-lost alchemical formula with unforeseen biomedical consequences. The same tech that illuminates the past could weaponize it. International collaboration offers a potential safeguard. Projects like the Digital Restoration Initiative, where scholars from conflicting nations jointly analyze artifacts via secure servers, prove that shared curiosity can transcend politics. When Greek and Turkish researchers pooled resources to study a smuggled Byzantine codex in 2022, they discovered it contained not heresy, but advanced hydrological plans that could modernize Istanbul's water infrastructure. Yet cooperation falters when stakes are highest. China's refusal to allow foreign scans of the Qin Shi Huang tomb, despite evidence it may house the lost library of the first emperor, highlights how national pride often overrides academic progress. The truth remains hostage to borders. The ethical dilemma cuts deeper than politics. Tibetan monks speak of terma, texts that awaken only when humanity reaches a spiritual threshold. Modern science echoes this caution. Psychologists warn that sudden exposure to radically disruptive knowledge, say proof of advanced prehistoric civilizations, could trigger collective cognitive dissonance, undermining societal stability. We've seen glimpses of this effect when the Dead Sea Scrolls challenged biblical scholarship, riots erupted in Jerusalem. Scale that reaction to a global, hyper-connected world, and the risks multiply exponentially. Some vaults might stay sealed not because we can't open them, but because we've unconsciously internalized the old warnings. Yet the greatest obstacle may be time itself. Every year, moisture, microbes, and oxidation erase more of these fragile records. The very act of unsealing a chamber can doom its contents, like the 5th century Coptic Gospels that crumbled upon contact with open air in 2019. Paradoxically, our rush to preserve might accelerate loss. New techniques like quantum locking, which suspends artifacts in magnetic fields to prevent decay, offer hope but remain experimental. The clock ticks louder with each passing season, a reminder that these libraries aren't just waiting for discovery, they're racing against oblivion. Perhaps the future of these quests lies not in brute force excavation, but in symbiosis. Projects like the Library of Recovered Voices, using AI to reconstruct oral traditions from spectral echoes in ancient recording wax, suggest a middle path, accessing knowledge without disturbing its physical vessels. Or consider the Vatican's recent compromise, allowing limited digital access to its secret archives while keeping originals under lock and key. Balance is possible if we recognize that some truths need filters, not cages. The real test won't be technological but philosophical. Can we handle what we've spent millennia trying to forget? The forbidden libraries beneath ancient thrones aren't just collections of forgotten texts. They're mirrors reflecting humanity's most profound contradictions. On one hand, we revere knowledge as the ultimate liberator, the force that lifts civilizations from darkness. Yet these sealed chambers remind us that every era has its line in the sand, truths too destabilizing, too terrifying to be set free. The emperors who buried them weren't merely tyrants, they were gatekeepers wrestling with a timeless question: how much enlightenment can a society bear before it unravels? Consider the parallels to our own world. Modern governments classify documents for national security. Tech giants algorithmically curate our information streams, and even scientific discoveries face ethical review boards. The mechanisms have evolved, but the tension remains identical. The balancing act between transparency and stability. What makes the ancient libraries so haunting is how they embody this dilemma in physical form. These weren't abstract debates, they were literal vaults, their doors welded shut by rulers who believed some keys shouldn't exist. Yet the allure of the forbidden is irresistible. From medieval alchemists decoding encrypted manuscripts to today's archaeologists scanning pyramids with muon tomography, the drive to uncover persists. There's something primal in this pursuit, not just curiosity, but the suspicion that these libraries might hold missing pieces of our collective story. What if the Dragon Throne's prophecies explain anomalies in Chinese dynastic cycles? Could Ivan the Terrible's lost archives reveal why Slavic folklore speaks of Hyperborean ancestors from the Arctic? The gaps in history whisper of possibilities too tantalizing to ignore, but fascination must be tempered with caution. Legends surrounding these libraries often carry warnings of madness, of plagues, of empires falling after disturbing what should have stayed buried. Whether supernatural or symbolic, these tales underscore a psychological truth. Not all knowledge liberates, some shatters paradigms too completely, leaving societies adrift without cultural anchors. The Aztecs' fatalistic acceptance of conquest after reading their doom in Codices, or the medieval scholars who abandoned rationality after encountering Gnostic texts, suggest that enlightenment has a dark twin disillusionment. So where does that leave us? Perhaps the real treasure isn't in uncovering these libraries, but in the search itself. The questions they provoke force us to examine our own boundaries. Would we, like the emperors of old, hide truths too explosive for public consumption? Or would we risk the chaos of unfiltered revelation? The answer lies not in ancient vaults, but in how we handle the forbidden knowledge of our own era, from AI ethics to genetic engineering. These modern libraries are already here, waiting for us to decide whether to seal them or set them free. Now it's your turn. If you stood before one of these forbidden archives, knowing its contents could change everything, would you turn the key? Drop your thoughts below, and if you're hungry for more mysteries lurking just beneath the surface of history, hit subscribe. The past has only begun to reveal